What does it take for us to build workplaces and a world that is fit for the future? A question that plagues many a leader and many an organization. How do we learn from our experiences? Are we shaping ourselves and our workplaces to be fit for the future? What does it take to invest in people and nurture success? How do we ensure that our investments in diversity, equity, and inclusion are delivering to the intended goals? Are we seeing the very invisible responsibility that most employees carry, that of being caregivers? What does it take to build a caregiver friendly workplace? Are leaders caregivers? What can leaders and organizations learn from caregivers and their experiences? How do we create safe spaces that enable inclusion? Is this something that is holding, especially women, back from the C-suite? We are delighted to bring to you a series of conversations around the idea of building future-fit corporates. Aloka, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bhavana, and thank you for having me here because I totally resonate with what Caregiver Saathi is doing. As I was having the chat with you, that this is not only the need of the hour, it's the need of the decade and the coming decades to come, and especially for what we call our generation and the generation which are going to be the CXOs and the CFOs in the next 10 15 years. So, hats off and kudos to you for what you do.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being an ally and a support and for your encouraging words. I would like to introduce Aloka and, in terms of her professional accomplishments, I must say they are fantastic. Aloka is a marketing communication specialist with over 25 years of experience across sectors, ranging from lifestyle, entertainment, FMCG, F&B, banking, retail, hospitality, and power. You must tell me which sectors you've left out. She has orchestrated several award-winning campaigns and communication strategies for leading brands like Gillette, Ariel, Oberoi Hotels, Fashion Design Council of India, Westside, Amul, Citibank, HDFC Bank, MasterCard, Z, Telefilms, and Pernod Ricard, to name a few. As India head of the consumer practice vertical at Weber Shandwick, she stabilized existing clients during change in management and fostered organic growth. That must have been something very interesting. As head of marketing and communications at Escomar's Group, Aloka spearheaded all communication strategies, contributed towards increased market share and revenue, and as COO, she launched the Escomar's ready-to-wear range. Aloka has organized and participated in a leadership course conducted by the Harvard faculty and implemented CDP in 22 villages in Madhya Pradesh. She's the founder director of Talking Frames, a production company. She is also a mentor at Aspire for Her and has completed a Women on Boards program in association with the US Consulate, AWE, and Aspire for Her. I am certain that this is not all that there is to Aloka. So, Aloka, tell us a little more about who you are.
Thank you, Bhavna. Thank you once again for having me here. Well, my marketing and communications career is on the other side, but I have been throughout the last 2 decades, been a primary as well as a secondary caregiver. So I totally understand where you come from and how much people need what you're doing. Like today, my son is 21, but when he was born, I was one of those. I was the kind of youngest VP in an organization called Escomas and Reed and Taylor, where most of the other VPs were 50 plus. I was just kind of touching 30. So, and it took me lots of, midnight oil, burning of midnight oil to reach there, right? And then I have my son, and I realize I'm in a city where neither my parents, neither my mother-in-law, none of them, they're in different cities. So how do I bring him up? As a result of which, and we did not have professional help.
Yes.
We didn't have the kind of crashes we have out today. those
Yeah.
days we didn't have those kind of professional helps, right? So I literally went back to my organization and said, can I kind of take a little bit of a break for a couple of years? And I
Mm.
was very pleasantly surprised when the organization came back to me. And actually, since I am a marketing communication person, I normally report to the CEOs or the owners, because we kind of strategize on everything from positioning to what you do forward with the organization. So actually, the owner of the firm, which is Mr. Kastibali, came back to me and said, "Aloka, why do you need to take the break? Why don't you figure out why? Let's see what going forward we can do together." And I was at that point of time traveling some 15 to 20 days in a month,
Mm.
and because I was going through dealer networks, I was meeting people, we were having conferences, all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
we actually together, and I was so happy. And I'm talking about 21 years ago, when we were not discussing the
But
26 weeks of maternity leave and the extension of sabbaticals or paid sabbaticals. And he actually give me that offer. Let's work this through together. So I
wow.
really created a team who did and I kind of my team did the touring for me. So the
Nice.
physical part of the touring and going to different cities is what they did for me. I went
Wow.
to work for 3 days a week unless there was a board meeting or some, for investor meeting where I had to be there. The rest of
Right.
it, I had teams come home. And those days we didn't have Zoom, so everything had to
Yeah.
be on a call. So it had to be on a phone call. So either the team came home or I went there, and we kind of managed. And for 4 years,
Wow.
we managed the job sharing by giving my team or empowering my team to do a lot of the jobs that I was doing. And also because my employer had that confidence in me that I could carry on, and I did not would not allow my work to suffer, which I did
Wow.
not. Well, there was one thing. I mean, as I said, there are no free lunches. So there was, I did not take a promotion for those 4 years, and my pay hike was also pretty nominal, which it is lower than the rest of the organization. But as I said, I was doing a trade-off between not doing what I love doing
Right.
and being able to be there for my kid who was there, right? And while I was working through the organization, very soon I realized my parents need looking after, because my
Mm.
father was having a health crisis, followed by my mother-in-law having another health crisis. She was detected with breast cancer. So,
Mm.
and at that point of time, though my husband was there, both of us were working, he was the primary caregiver for my mother-in-law. And we were
Right.
trying to figure out, who do we have with us? I mean,
Mm.
whose need was higher? My father, who wanted a surgery, should I get him in Bombay first, or should I, have my mother-in-law, or can we have both of them at the same time? And there were times
Mhm.
for a few months here and there when we actually had a room to the cancer patient and another room to the person who wanted the surgery. And I can totally imagine what caregivers go through, because it is not only the financial and the managing of time, it is also, since we were given the onus of taking the decisions on behalf of our siblings, right? Because my brother stayed in the US,
Yeah.
my husband's siblings were also, one in Singapore and one in the US. So one was being able to make a decision on behalf of all of them. So tomorrow nobody tells us, "Oh, you could have done this differently." That is an additional stress when you're dealing with serious illnesses. That, yes, I'm doing my best, but I have to be perceived to be doing my best as well. You
I
know,
am so glad you brought that up. It's a thing that we hear in our community, in our support group every day. People struggle with explaining to other family members that they are doing the best and feel misjudged.
absolutely, absolutely. I have seen people stop talking to each other. I have seen siblings fall apart because one sibling who was not there to take the call during an emergency actually comes back, and it's a very easy to do a postmortem later on, but the
Yeah.
person who is actually standing there having those conferences with the doctors in the middle of an ICU or outside an ICU and taking the call is a completely different ball game, and it takes a lot of nerves, a lot of initiative, and a lot of every little effort of yours, and capability of yours to go through that. So
I'm so glad you brought that up because a lot of times, there are a lot of misunderstandings within families. There is falling apart, all kinds of things. And many times, the primary caregiver feels burdened by some of these things. And the long distance caregiver is going through their own anxieties and guilt and struggle and fears and um, unable to have that emotional conversation. And because we don't have that conversation,
yeah, yeah.
it manifests in so many other ways. And I think that is only going to go up.
Yeah, and I think one thing which kind of helped me, I can share that with you. It's whatever it helped me was I was all the time very, whatever step I was taking, I always kept my brother, or when in the case of my mother-in-law, I insisted, and my husband was also very clear on saying that this is what the doctor is saying, and this is why we are taking the call. Are you
Right.
kind of okay with that? Okay, so we
Mm,
kind of even if another thing is finances, because we are handling finances, right? Sometimes there might be just somewhere a misunderstanding regarding finance, and that's one of the easiest thing to be misunderstood.
yeah.
So again, putting everything on the table. Okay, this is what the insurance company gives you, and this is what we have to pitch in, or whatever whoever has to pitch in. So these
Yeah.
are the things I think when you're having those open conversations. One is the emotional part of it, because at that point of time, when you're in the midst of a crisis, I think you are just trying to somehow put in all your energies and trying to kind of sail through, and see that at that your father or your mother or your or mother-in-law, whoever you're taking care of, is coming out of that successfully. And I think nothing gives you more pleasure than seeing them coming out of the hospital and back home. I think at that point of time that is there, but yet you have to kind of juggle to say, okay, yeah, no, guys, here we are. I'm taking this call, but please be on board and tell me upfront if this is anything which you're not comfortable with, so that I actually have done. I have actually got doctors to be on calls to talk. So this is what your opinion. Let two other people listen to that. Or that we know it's very difficult first to get a specialist, and then to make him be on call saying, "Boss, can you please tell me what you're saying, your opinion," so that two other people on the other side of the phone can hear. So,
Yeah.
that is as I said, so unless you are a caregiver, you really don't understand what goes through that. And I know I totally appreciate, and I know what you have gone through, and you understand what I'm saying. As I said, no amount of theories or no amount of those reports or your percentages of 40%, 50% can actually be explained unless you have gone through the process yourself.
That is so true. And, as you were describing your experience at Escomar about having flexi work, I could see, envy surge to my cheeks because I have a story, which is that when we moved to Mumbai, my daughter was about a year old. I was interviewing with an organization for a role in HR. That was my discipline. And I had a lovely interaction with the CEO. And the CEO, very, very special person to me, said in the interview that, would you like to consider a career in sales? He was the sales and marketing head and the CEO. And my God, I would have given an arm and leg for that opportunity.
Hmm.
Um, I'm very lucky that I could have had an open conversation with my partner, but we have such deep social conditioning that I thought it was my job to care for my daughter, and I couldn't take a traveling job. And there was no way I could negotiate this with a new organization, right? Many years later, I spoke with my husband and told him, you know what, this was on the table. And he said, why did you not even discuss it with me? I did not even give myself. And this is a person like me who has been brought up in a certain way, who has, the ability to put her voice across. And if someone like me could take a step back and say that, this is not for me now because I must be a good mother, and a good mother doesn't travel too much. I felt so much envy, I can't tell you, but I'm so glad that you have this story to tell.
Yeah, but that happened about 21 years ago. But what happened about 5 years ago when my son was in the ninth or the 10th standard? I was not that lucky that time because then I was with Weber Shandwick, right? And in a consulting career or in a consulting job, right? Uh, Especially we're handling a food industry. All the crisis happens on a Saturday morning at 7 o'clock. So I mean, at 7 o'clock, you would figure out some FDI has come to Chikmagalur, for example, and one of your labels of expiry date has been missing or just been peeled off. So then you get a call from the organization and you get and you are the consultant. So okay, the first call comes to you. You're the first port of call, right? So and so at that point of time, I was like traveling 3 or 4 days a week. And I remember my son was in the ninth standard, and I used to leave for the airport and he used to leave to write his exams in the morning. And I used to tell Aditya, hi, all the best for your exams. And he used to one day he turned back and said, Mama, do you know which paper I'm writing? I said, no. So at that point of time, I did not have a similar situation which I had 21 years ago. And I literally,
Wow.
and then I actually quit my job and I said, no, I can't. I did quit my job. That's when I quit my consulting job at Weber Shandwick. And like yesterday, when I was going through a lot of data, I was just shuffling through data. I figured out even today, you know, 90% of women are worried to ask for a flexible timing because they
Yeah.
think that's going to impact their career growth. They're going to be discriminated. They are going to be, somehow pinned up there saying that, okay, you can't,
Yeah.
do this, so you're not fit enough to be. As I said, I was heading consumer growth for the country, and I took
Yeah.
it for myself, and realized I couldn't do what I did with Escomas. Because here, the client
Mhm.
wants to talk to you.
Yeah.
They would not want to talk to the next one in line when there's a crisis or when there's certain things to be. Unfortunately, that happened before COVID. Maybe post COVID, I would have still told them, boss, I'm there. You can see my face. I'm there on the screen. Right.
Right. Right.
So pre COVID, we couldn't do that.
That is so true. I do think the pandemic kind of gave us a lot of leverage vis-a-vis technology, vis-a-vis telecommuting, vis-a-vis working from home and flexibility. But we recently also seen that workplaces, some workplaces are insisting on getting back to
Yeah.
work, and saying that it is so hard to build affinity or culture, or workplaces demand a certain participation, and that's driving set of behaviors and policies. So what I'd like to be able to tap into, Aloka, is your vast experience of not just being a working woman, but also leading a team and having many others who may have wanted different forms of flexibility,
Absolutely.
right? What do you believe worked? And, were there differences on account of gender? How easy was it for team members to talk about their caregiving responsibilities? Are there any stories that you would like to tell in which you feel proud of or which you feel you could have done differently?
Uh, like Bhavna, one thing is, as I said, like, we are. It totally depends on which sector you are working with. As I said, I could very well juggle when I was the head of
Yes.
marketing with an organization, but I could handle that. But when you're handling a consulting business, so
Yes.
a lot of these things basically kind of stems from the kind of business that you're handling in.
Okay.
For when I was with Weber, for example, when I was doing in the consulting firm, I had a team. I had teams in Bombay, Delhi, and Bangalore, right? So my Delhi team, I was very sure that I didn't want the women to go back beyond a particular time,
Yes.
right? And I was sensitized, and when they came and asked, "Boss, can we go home early today?" Or if you have a little child, I think when it came to me, I have always given them yes. If you have a child to look after, or there's a PTA happening, or any other
Yeah.
responsibilities, commitments,
Yeah.
please go ahead. As long as you manage how. See, for me, it
Yeah.
is. I think what organizations should also look at is your flexibility in work hours by any way impacting your KPIs,
That's right.
right? So if
Absolutely.
I can deliver something in 2 hours vis-a-vis somebody else delivering the same in 4 hours, why
Yeah.
should not I be given that flexibility of kind of
Yeah.
choosing my work hours? But
Absolutely.
unfortunately, more and more organizations, and today we see some 10% or less than 10% organization actually being sensitized or being open to being flexible working. And when we talk about flexible working hours, a lot of people don't want to opt for that for the simple reason they think they are not going to be considered in the race for the next promotion, right? Or they think whenever there's a decision, an important decision meeting is happening, you're going to be left out of that. Your exposure to senior leaders is limited because you have chosen to have a hybrid functioning. So these are the factors which actually a lot of people, even the 10% or less than 10% organizations who give you or offer you the flexible or the hybrid working systems, the fear of stigma in the employees lead them not to opt for them. And because they don't opt for them, the corporation thinks, oh, there's those, these are
I'm
not
not
required.
required.
So that's a vicious cycle, right?
That's so true. That
and
is so true.
and you don't break the cycle unless people are really, or organizations are really interested to go through and study the demographics and see what is the individual need of that person. And if there is, sorry, you wanted to say something?
No, no. Please finish.
I said, and there's no one size fits all because every individual and has different commitments. Whether it's caregiving commitments, whether it is yourself, whether spending a little more time with yourself,
Yeah.
yourself discoveries. We are all burnt out after having to juggle so many hats and so many things, including the traffic in cities like Mumbai when you're reaching the organization. So,
Yeah.
if you, in the process, the only thing that is happening is your burnout and
Mm-hmm.
exhaustion, right?
Yeah.
So, where are we getting the time to re-look at ourselves and
Yeah.
prioritize or which part of our exhaustion is actually needed and what can we minimize?
So well.
Realign our lives and priorities.
So well said, Aloka. And I think I would have definitely double clicked on the fact that doing, the job of caregiving has an element of physical care, but there is a huge element of mental and emotional burden, which can lead to stress and burnout, whether or not you're an active primary caregiver. Sometimes being a long distance caregiver
Mhm.
can create its own, emergency circumstances, episodes, having to rush or having to find solutions long distance, and that can create that hyper vigilance to
Mhm.
constantly be on the lookout can also create exhaustion and burnout. And clearly, this impacts women more. What is your experience?
Totally. I mean, I was just going through a Deloitte Women at Work 24. I mean, we just got that on the Aspire for Her thing, and I was actually going through that, and I saw that 50% of women who has a partner are caregivers. For 50%, okay? And 60% of women who has a partner are caregivers for an elderly person,
Yeah,
right? And this, and that we would be in the interesting part of this thing is, even if you're a primary earner,
yeah,
even for primary earners, 38% women are looking after elderly care and
yes,
45% women are looking after children, despite
yeah,
being the primary earners. So, I mean, I'm just, looking at the numbers. I mean, I just, this is the numbers given to back a lot. Women at work. And we are talking 21 years ago what I did. I'm talking after 21 years. How have we changed? We haven't changed much. Where have organizations taken the next leap? We haven't. So as I come to again the same vicious cycle, all the rules and most of these corporate policies have become so draconian because they were set by a set of people about a decade or 2 decades ago, where the norm was that men come to work and women stay at home being a caregiver.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And I don't see much of those rules being changed other than a handful of organizations like an HUL giving you 1 month leave for a caregiver, a primary caregiver, or a PNG India who has come out with, if you have a differently abled child, they aid you financially and they have sessions with you. But my point is, every time such things are being written in the newspaper, things which make news, which means that is not the norm, right? Which means
yeah.
there's so many other people who need to follow that norm, and we are nowhere near that, right?
That is so true. No, I'm so glad. I'm so glad to hear it from you, rather than feel like this person who's constantly ranting about the same things. Uh, having worked with organizations or known your network over a period of time, what do you believe are some of the policies or practices that could enable or support or recognize the challenges of caregivers at the workplace? Clearly, when men are caregivers, their approach is very different. When women are caregivers, our approach is very different. So, what can organizations do more or different from simply giving you time off or giving you flexibility? Should they do something else? Or is this enough? Just give the time off.
No, I think there are a lot of things, Bhavna. There's, as I was saying, that there's not one size fits all solution to this.
Right,
I
right.
think more organizations one should be in touch with the changing times. The demographics are changing. Like prior to COVID and post COVID itself, the caregiving percentages, and I'm talking about India, has changed.
That's
Okay,
right.
India has 39% of young adults who are looking after elderly people today,
That's right. That's
vis-a-vis
right.
a world figure of 20%, right? So
Yeah,
pre-COVID number of hours per week was 7 hours per week.
yeah,
Post-COVID, it has become 24.2 hours.
yeah,
Okay, so we have gone up 3 times
yeah,
of young adults having to juggle their source of earnings. I would, whether it's a
yeah,
job or your business or whatever. We are talking of organization, we'll talk about jobs here, and
yeah,
being able to be there physically, mentally, as well as financially
yeah.
for the person you're looking at.
That's
So, one important thing I think when organization can start is being flexible.
right. That's right.
Flexibility doesn't just mean I'm giving you 2 hours less to work in a week, or you can work 1 day out of home. Flexibility means rising up to meet the requirements of the person who requires that flexibility. For somebody,
Yeah,
it might be a financial aid,
yeah.
which a company can maybe look into, because for an organization, that is nothing, but for an individual, that's huge.
That's right.
Earlier, we used to say the PUCs used to have this insurance for parents. Nowadays, a lot of private sector companies have taken
That's
that
right.
out, right?
That's right.
Uh, it doesn't cost much for an organization, but we
Yeah.
could have that
That's
getting
right.
looked into. Or if you don't want to get directly into sponsoring, at least your corporate team can give advice to the caregiving people who are caregivers, which is the best insurance to go for. Are there
That's
enough? One
that's
of the worst things I have seen this queuing up in hospitals is the day of discharge,
yeah.
because you're spending 5 to 6 hours
Yeah.
running between the doctor writing a discharge certificate and then you going to the front
Yeah.
department, who is
Yeah.
trying to then coordinate with the insurance guys, because
Yeah.
yours is an individual insurance. I think
Yeah.
that is a step where the corporates can come in, because when you have a corporate insurance,
Yeah.
you know it is much faster. So I'm
That's
saying, even if you're not looking at sponsoring or paying that installments, maybe you can look into a way where it can be up under the umbrella of a caregiver which is looking after. So maybe my parent doesn't give a direct insurance from my organization, but
yeah.
somewhere it is under the umbrella which enables the hospital clerk to
Yeah.
accelerate my process,
That's so true.
right? uh, the other thing is also, I think we can also get
I'm only smiling because, you are literally, talking about distills from my life experience. So I'm just, please continue.
Okay, thank you. I can imagine, because we have been in the same boat for some time, so not maybe
Yeah.
in the same level, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So these are a few things I thought, and also I think sharing of experiences. I mean, if I have 10 people in the organization,
Yeah.
can we share our stories? Can somebody pick up something from other people's experiences? Like they say, you don't have to learn everything from your own experience.
Absolutely.
Storytelling
Absolutely.
sessions, counseling. Counseling is again looking after your mental health, because, as I
Yeah.
said, or as you rightly said, mental health is one thing which is totally badgered when you're a caregiver, right? It is because
Yeah.
there's a constant badgering and constant
Yeah.
expectation of you to be above the sanity level for the
Yeah.
sake of the people that are dependent on you. Yeah.
That's
And also a set of others who are maybe not so directly dependent on you.
right.
So, this kind of mental counseling, which should
Mm.
be there in any organization, whether you are a caregiver or a non-caregiver, because even if you're not a caregiver, you do need some amount of counseling.
That's right.
In our country, in India, we are so nice, we are so new to the concept of counseling. And the moment somebody
Yeah.
hear a word counseling, they think that you have gone cuckoo, but that's not the thing. My point is,
That's right.
all of us need counseling at some point, because you need to vent out. And meeting a counselor doesn't mean that you are not sane. It is just means that you need to talk to somebody who is not
That's
judging you.
One of the most beautiful practices, Aloka, that I have come across is a sensitive organization that invested in educating and training the managers of when your employee, one, your team member should feel comfortable to be able to say, I have a caregiving situation. They might not call it a caregiving situation. You see, the other challenge that we have is in India, we don't see ourselves as caregivers. I mean, you and I will not call ourselves caregivers, right? We do what we do because we are good family members. We are responsible daughters and sons and husbands and wives and siblings. So, nobody will come to you with this language of saying, I'm now a caregiver or I have a caregiving situation. This is not everyday language.
Absolutely.
So, people have to be sensitive to pick that up, right? So, if you come and talk to me some other language, I have to be able to say, Are, she's talking about caregiving. And then I have to at least hold the space for a little while and then gently nudge to the counselor or to the support system. One of my managers had once said to me, I'm not your therapist. I don't want to do anything with what's going on in your life. Just put your shit together and then we will talk.
How sad is that? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Interestingly, uh, a- it was one of the women leaders that, but you know, at that point, I felt whatever I felt. But I don't hold it against that person because the circumstances and the pressures on that manager
Mm-hmm.
are of a different kind, and it is not easy for the few women in organizations to
True.
take a different
Right.
stance. So I think when there are few leaders at the top, there are few women managers, it is very hard for them to represent all of women and a different stance. And it is therefore very important that there is a critical mass
Mm-hmm.
and that more women reach the leadership levels.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Like you rightly said, that when you have, the women manager is again, she's fighting her own battle of trying to prove
that's
herself,
right.
in a, she's fighting her own imposter syndromes there, right?
Yeah,
So she has zero tolerance or zero time for figuring out what people working with me are
that's right.
kind of facing. And like you said, there's another thing of getting women on, return to work.
That's right.
Not only women, I think more and more women should, because I think in one of your videos, I saw that 23% of women left their jobs post their first child, right?
Yeah,
And I think it was of every post of yours, which, and it stuck on my mind. And then I did a little more research in that, and that is very true, because and then you don't come back. I kind of through Aspire for Her and a lot of other mentoring that I do, I have we speak to these women, right? And when I have talked to a lot of them, they're so happy that my family is very supportive of me that I'm not working. Really? I mean, why is your family so supportive that you're not working? And what about your own dreams? What about your own aspirations? You have, got for a degree, you have fought the same to get that MBA, or for your PhD or an engineering degree or whatever degree you've got it. And then after 3 years or 2 years of marriage, you decided to sit at home, and you are not missing anything, because again, that conditioning comes into, yes, what I was talking about. Because your immediate environment, the sound bites around you, are saying that it is so very okay to sit at home and look after your kid and do nothing.
yeah,
So we think that my family is very supportive. So the women, when the girls that I'm talking to, they say, my husband is so supportive that I'm not working. I said, but why can't your husband be supportive of you working? Can we, just somewhere we do a little different? Till
yeah.
the time they face a crisis. Like one of these girls or one of these ladies that we're talking to, she also quit her job after her son was born. So for a 5, 6 years, she did not work. And
Mm,
then today, she has a mother who is suffering from a terminal illness. And
mm,
today, nobody is giving her the financial backup to look after her mother. So what happened to all the support system, which was encouraging her to stay at home and
yeah.
not be financially independent, where she today is in no position to go and look after her own mother?
Financial independence is so important for your agency and your decision making. And, if you do make a choice, unpaid care work that women end up doing holds us back uh, in many ways. And I think it is very important to recognize that it's not a question of sitting at home. When you mean that, you're saying that you will be responsible for a lot of work. For example, nobody else may say it to you, but you will think that I'm the one who's at home, so let me take care of this work, which will not be remunerative, but it will be work.
Yeah.
and it will add up over time. So there is a need for constant conversation and renegotiation with your immediate environment. And I do think that as women, we don't teach other women and we don't learn good negotiation skills in which women are at the center of the decision,
Absolutely.
not the last.
What we call the voice of authority. Who is the voice of authority? Yeah.
Well
So
said.
while you are saying that my husband is very happy that I'm at home, who is making the choice for you? Are
Yeah.
you the choice? Making the choice?
Yes,
Are you the voice of authority? Or is your husband making that decision for you?
that's
You know,
right.
and Bhavna, a lot of this, like, what we see, what I was saying about conditioning, is also happening the way we are brought up at home.
That's right.
Before
All
we
the time.
enter the office door, or we decide to break the glass ceilings somewhere, I think all of us are bringing up a future generation who is working. What are we
Yeah.
conditioning them with? What are they
Yeah.
seeing at home? What are they learning from our own actions?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
then we go to the external voices that we see around us in terms of the content, the messaging. I mean, everybody, India is supposed to be the second highest largest users of the internet. Where, who is the voice there?
Yeah.
20, only 25, 24, less than 25, I think about 24% of people of any messaging or any content has women, or are women oriented. The less, 76% is men.
Yeah.
So if we are consuming that amount of content, and we are so that's a generation which makes a film like Animal a success, because the voice of authority in everything we consume is men.
Yeah. You know, there was a recent report that came from BCG that spoke about what organizations need to do to be able to recognize employees who are caregivers. Okay. They did this study in Southeast Asia and said if there were two categories of employees, one who are caregivers and one who are non caregivers, what do you think would be the ratio of caregivers to non caregivers?
45%, 50% caregivers.
Okay. In Southeast Asia?
Southeast Asia, yeah.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. It's 60-40,
Hmm.
very close. What do you think is the ratio in India?
I'll be slightly higher, 10% higher than that.
It is 88-12,
Oh wow.
right?
Totally. Yeah. Okay. 88. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now, even I was not ready for that number.
I wasn't either.
Yeah.
And it's a publicly available report, BCG, the Caregiving Crisis, and it speaks about, what is it that organizations need to do in order to recognize the fact that 88% of your employees are going to be caregivers. There's a huge impact in terms of sheer talent that's available to you. There's an impact in terms of people's concern. 70% are worried about their well being, and there will potentially be a GDP loss of many billions because employees who are caregivers are burning out.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, it's a
True.
fascinating study. And given this information, if I were to ask you on the basis of your experience, now that you are a leader in a decision making position, what would you advise for organizations to start building in order to plan? Because we can't dig a well when we are thirsty, right? We have
Correct.
to start the planning now. How would you shape an organization in the light of this upcoming challenge?
Okay. So this, I'll I will just add one thing which you talked about Southeast Asia. I just want to add one thing which is going through is like today in India, we
Yeah.
are 50% of our population is less than 25 years of age, and I think
Yes.
about 65% is below 35 years of age. If,
Right.
that's what we saw. And there's something called the TFR, which is the total fertility rate, which is supposed to be
Yeah.
2.1. And other than four states, or the other states are below 2 right now. So the only four states, thankfully, which counts for 30% of our population is like UP, UP, Jharkhand, and Bihar. So they are above the 2.1 TFR rate. Now, the reason I'm having this conversation is today, when we are looking at that graph of population, the highest chunk of population is between 11 years to 25 years. Today we are
Hmm.
talking 2024. Okay, at the the 2021, I think the 2020 index is that. In 2040, which is another 15 years from now, because of the TFR falling, so the
Hmm.
your younger population, your below 25 or the below 10 is diminishing,
Yeah.
and what was the pyramid is becoming heavier on them in the middle currently.
That's
So
right.
when you go to 2040, which is another 15 years from now, the maximum amount of population would be between 30 to 39.
Right.
And that is the correct, and that is exactly the age where people are double caregivers. Okay.
Absolutely.
And just to
The
add on
sandwich
to what
generation.
yes. So in about 15 years, we are digging the well, we are almost reached the well. So you might as well finish digging and concreting it right now. Is what
Well said. Well said. One of my favorite quotes is Desmond Tutu, who said, "At some point, you have to stop pulling people out of the river and go upstream to figure out why they are falling in the river." Right? And I think you have beautifully, mathematically, with statistics, pointed out that let's look at the data. The data is saying we don't really just need to fix the stuff that is facing us now. We need to have some systems to understand that this is going to become a bigger problem 15 years down the line. And you know what? Many, many wells have to be dug up.
yeah, absolutely, totally. So that's where the companies they don't understand. As I said, we are still less than 10% people are actually even sensitized. They're even waking up that this is what is today, and it is what tomorrow is going to be. So if you want to retain or looking, and I will come to the economics of it later, but you will have to kind of get your people who are 50% going to be caregivers any which ways, if not
Yeah,
higher. So, what
yeah,
are we doing today to retain them? Okay.
that's right.
So, are we really sensitizing ourselves to the needs of today's maybe 10% or 5% or 10% of the population who are caregivers, but tomorrow that's going to increase? Maybe we start small. Maybe, as I said, have one is the flexibility, one is your sessions, one is using your organizational resources in not only training the caregivers or giving them the help. I think also training your managers
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that they kind of the managers proactively engage with everybody and say that boss, there are these benefits we're giving to you, and there's no stigma in actually taking them. Take
yeah,
up these benefits, and it is not going to impact your career or your growth or your promotion or your pay hike. So that's where we start saying that yes, you are welcome to be a caregiver. You're first of all have maybe start with openly discuss it. A lot of caregivers don't even have the freedom, or they do not at least have the mental freedom. Psychologically, they think if I discuss it within my organization that I have this commitment towards my parents, my bosses would think that my mind is not in my job.
yeah.
So that being able to verbalize openly about your other commitments is, I think, the starting point.
Caregiver Saathi did a research in which it turned up as one of the top 5 concerns of caregivers. Can I safely talk about it at the workplace?
I'm so glad that I resonated on that, because I can imagine people not being able to talk about it, right? Because everybody is there to judge the other person. So I think we start there about,
Yeah,
and then we talk about using organization resources, like having those stories.
yeah,
You can learn so much from the other person dealing with a particular situation. So
yeah.
while having those open forum just to discuss, sometimes even if you don't learn anything from that, just being heard is such a relief, because that
Absolutely.
symbolizes empathy, that somebody
I
is willing to listen to me, right?
Absolutely. I should invite you for our conversations with Gentle Warriors for sharing your story on your caregiving and the multiple caregiving that you have done. Because we run this, we have, with 3 seasons of people who volunteer to tell their stories. And we find that some people are willing to talk about their stories, especially when the caregiving is behind them,
Mhm.
not when they are actively as caregivers. Of course, there are more women than there are men, but there are many men as well. And the other interesting thing is that there are many people who want to tell their story,
Mhm.
but don't want to say it on a video call. They
Yeah,
want to tell their stories anonymously.
yeah, I can.
So we also have a podcast called Caregiver Diaries,
Mhm.
in which you can anonymously share your story.
Oh, excellent. Very nice.
So I love your point about creating forums, and maybe employee resource groups, or what do they do
Mhm.
for some of these things. Any other thoughts that you have? What you think you would, as a board member, advise organizations to start building as they plan for this shifting demographics?
I think also we would encourage returnees,
Encourage returnees.
whether
Most certainly.
women or men. You might have spent 10 years. Just because you've taken a 3-year gap, that doesn't mean that your skill sets have gone down. All you need to
That's
do
right.
is upscale and update yourself.
That's
So kind of, that is one thing of getting your talent back. See, when
I
you're
have
looking.
an interesting question there for you,
Mhm.
which is those 3 years or those 5 years or whatever that you have spent caregiving, are there any competencies that can actually be valuable for organizations?
I think there are multiple.
Yeah.
I think
Please go for it.
crisis. I mean, being able to handle crisis with a level head. Okay, being
Yeah,
able to take those decisions single-handedly without enough data being spewed in front of you like it happens in an organization. You know,
yeah,
I think being able to multitask, being able to be a very good listener, being able to have, give the emotional support to the person you're looking after, the empathy part of it, right?
yeah,
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 as I said, we can think of multiple kind of, So you are a multitasker doing so many things there out there. Being able to convince your siblings that yes, this is the best route. So I am a salesperson there. you know, I
that's
tell
right.
and negotiating with the nurse at night saying, boss, can you please listen to if the bell is being pressed? Tomorrow I will look after you. I'm there for you. I will listen to your stories, but today please look after my dad. You being able to convince that, because they are also running helter skelter. I mean, I think someday that's a different conversation, when I think the hospitals as organizations need to do a lot more for their caregivers and the nursing staff that they have before
Yeah,
it. And I don't think we are too far away from a place where the kind of exodus of nursing talent we are seeing from India to Canada and US, Europe, and everywhere else, that
yeah.
we would be having AI robots doing nursing soon if we don't do something about it. Sorry, that's a different topic. I just got into it accidentally. But
Yes, yeah, it's a very important other linkage, of course, and I do think we should pick up that conversation. But I'd like to come back. I love the point that you made that individuals who have been caregivers or who have taken time for caregiving actually bring in very interesting competencies and skills to the workplace, whether it is empathy, whether it is dealing with ambiguity, whether it is managing crises, whether it is anticipating multiple things at the same time. And the most beautiful of all is humility. And, that's what we are telling everybody, that listen, leaders need to have all these,
Hmm.
because all of these builds resilient individuals and resilient organizations. So there you go. Have more caregivers at your workplace.
Absolutely. And knowing and doing it all, knowing very well that you're not getting an iota of appreciation for doing it.
Oh
So
my God. What appreciation. You, you might be hauled over coals.
yeah, I know, but I would happy to get the appreciation, but they're far and
Few.
few coming in. So as I
Yeah.
said, so
You would
that's
be lucky if you're not hauled over coals. Your feet to fire, saying you didn't do this and you could have done better. But jokes aside, I wanted to highlight the fact that somebody is not on a break and is building skills that are actually valuable for organizations.
absolutely totally
Not just managerial skills, but I think leadership skills,
totally.
provided we can have that lens. What I'd also like for you to comment on is how do you think managers should see themselves as caregivers to their teams?
They should. They
Why?
should, for the simple reason, um, if you really want your team to, as I always say, a happy workplace or a happy team is when you succeed the most, right?
Yeah,
And you can always be happy if your extraneous needs or your other things which are bugging you are taken care of. So if you start by being a listener to your team, just
yeah,
listen, maybe post work for 10 minutes when you're having your coffee break or during lunchtime. S- just have the chat, be that person who your team or teams can open up to and discuss. Maybe that's when you pick up a couple of things, and like you said, that what are the different things one leader should do. The leadership comes from learning, listening and learning,
yeah,
right? And you learn from other people's, and that's an opportunity for you to maybe tweak your rules, maybe be a little more flexible. And if you are not, that person is going to leave and go, right?
yeah,
I mean, like a lot of leaders, a lot of senior management do not see caregiving as it's an invisible issue. It is something they don't want to deal with directly. It is something you want to put under the carpet, but it is eating away of your bottom line. It is impacting your bottom line because if you're losing people, it is not only the cost of it's not a recruiting and retaining them and training them. It is also the institutional knowledge that you have
yeah.
lost, right? it
Well
is
said.
it is the so many years of the service that they have done with it, the loyalty, the kind of the camaraderie that you have built with them.
Yeah,
So it is just not that fixed HR amount of money that you've lost, that you have to pay the agency to get somebody else. It's so much
that's
more,
true.
right? And higher the echelons you go, the higher is the impact, the higher
Yeah,
is the loss. So
that's
the earlier the senior management learn that retaining my people, despite giving them that the flexibility in terms of space, doing that little bit of subsidization here and there doesn't cost the company more. If you actually sit and do the math, maybe a little subsidizing or giving aiding somebody with a elderly care or a child care might have a far more better impact on my bottom line, because a happy employee is going to have higher productivity.
that is true.
Same goes with the teams. I mean, if I can only motivate my teams if I know what is troubling them. If
Yeah,
I know what really motivates them. For them, I need to know them as a person, not just as a resource. So that
Yeah,
personal touch is very important
that's right.
for any organization to grow. And I think all senior leaders, I mean, they have. I hear a lot of agencies and a lot of companies. They do this once a week dinner out or lunch out, and sometime in a group of 10. My advice would be to have smaller groups because you don't want to open up in front of 10 other people, right? So
That's
while you're ticking the box, oh, I have had a team lunch or a team dinner, the team might not have opened up in front of you,
right. No,
right? So maybe a
just
one-on-one,
Instagram pictures.
so maybe a one-on-one coffee which cost you zero would have a higher impact of
Yeah.
figuring out what really is happening in that person's life, and that's where you make your rules from.
So well said. And I like the fact that, you gave a very, very practical, everyday experience example. And i- if there was, you had the blue sky and you had to visualize a support system for a caregiver, for yourself, in the
Mhm.
times that you were a caregiver, and you were to visualize in today's world what is possible, what kind of a system would you design for yourself?
Mm, I would maybe, as I said, one is somebody to, I think to start with, somebody to have a empathetic listening tool who can, I can just come out and start with that. That's
Yeah,
my mental piece. You start with the mental stability and the sanity part of it. So at the end of the day, if I could just come back and howl and talk gibberish, but somebody is listening to me, right?
yeah, yeah. A human being, a
Absolutely.
human.
As a human being, somebody is listening to what I'm having say. I'm Even if I'm not making the most sense out of it, but I think starting there, I think listening is where you start with.
Right,
And I would have like uh, for as myself, I stuck with a company for more than a decade because I could it allowed me to juggle my care
right,
of my parents as well as my mother-in-law and my son. But I just wished more companies did that, right?
right.
Because then I wouldn't have, maybe sometime today when I kind of think back, I think maybe I lost out because I stayed with the company for 10 years. There
Mm,
were other opportunities. There were people who were willing to pay much higher than what I was paying that I was getting paid. But I did not leave because I was not sure that the next company would give me the same flexibility that I was getting here. So at
yeah,
some point of time, if I reflect back, I might just think that maybe there were three, four other companies and more people were joining the bandwagon, then I wouldn't be restricted in my choice of joining others and yet continue with my responsibilities. So if in a blue sky, I would expect 50% of the companies, and if not more, to
yeah,
take up this and kind of, take it forward. And it doesn't cost
yeah,
much. As I said, the bottom line is when your employees are happy and your employees are caregivers, whether you like it or not. Today is
yeah.
39%, tomorrow is going to be 79%.
That's
And
true.
we are saying 88%, as you are saying, are caregivers. Now, maybe 88% of those people are not working in your organization, but maybe 44% are.
Yeah,
So what are we doing about them?
yeah.
That
Yeah, and as a caregiver, I think I loved what you have already said, which is some access through corporates in terms of whether it is insurance, whether it is services, whether it is certain products, whether it is a community, your opportunity to tell stories, some kind of a platform in which family members can come together and have a common care protocol or whatever. Those are brilliant ideas. uh,
also
I would
referrals. Sorry to interrupt. I think the referrals, a lot of time reaching out to the right doctor takes a lot of, and sometimes you don't even have the contacts. If you know what the scenes are today, you really need to know somebody to be able to get to the best person for you.
yeah,
So I would say a lot of corporates can help with that, those referrals, right? I was reading somewhere about Unext. Now, Unext is just a concern of Manipal, so they can do it because they have Manipal. So they have their caregivers who has the first preference when it comes to their doctors or diagnostics or anything. But I was just thinking, could more and more corporates tie up with maybe hospitals, tie up with people like a caregiver Saathi for counseling the family members, right?
Yeah,
Of how to handle this angst. Like the
yeah,
forum, it would be somebody like you coming and talking to the rest of the people or talking to the people who are being impacted. And
yeah.
rest of I think, have with the insurance kind of makes life so easy because half the time you're figuring out whether you're reaching out to the right guy. Sorry for the interruption. I just
No, absolutely. I think access to resources is something that we all experienced, especially during the pandemic. I think we had that very, very difficult second wave when we were all trying to help everybody, and many of us had very, very difficult times. But simply access to good resources can be such a challenge, and we would like to, we would like to be able to solve for that. And I would like to do a little plug-in and say, register on the Caregiver Saathi website to get access to all these resources because, guess what? The Caregiver Saathi app is making certain efforts to be able to bridge this gap. And I do believe that corporates can play a big role, not just in creating access for their own employees, but I believe corporates have the power and the agency to create social change. For example, if corporates insist that, listen, being healthy is valuable, there is an incentive for it. And
yeah.
we know how incentives work. If corporates insist that, women should have equal employment opportunity, it can change the shape of society.
Absolutely. And not only encourage, we basically create a work environment for them to be able to come back with their head held high and not feel the stigma that I have taken a break, I've come back to work, right?
That's right.
So like and that's where you're if we do not create a middle management which is equal opportunities, how are
Yeah.
we going to create a C-suite where we are equally represented? So that is very, very vital.
So, with that hope and with that wish and with that belief that we can have multiple such conversations, I have to regretfully bring this conversation to a close. But uh, I have made multiple notes, Aloka. I have loved this conversation. I have made multiple notes about picking up further conversations with you. Any closing remarks from you?
I would just want to say that the happiest workplaces are the ones who has the best business practices, are the ones who make more money. And it has been proved by many researchers. It is not only the gender gap I'm talking about. The workplace has to be happy for people to do their best. It increases productivity. It impacts your bottom line. So let's all managers and senior leaders proactively look into that. That's all I want to say. Thank you. And it was great having this conversation. Didn't even realize where time flew. We just we just had free flowing, and how free flowing was it? Thank you so much, Bob.
Loved it, loved it. And thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights, also your vulnerability and sharing such lovely things. I look forward to many more conversations. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. I look forward to. Thank you.